Hey guys, I'm Mark.
I'm Alen.
And welcome to another episode of The Next Man Up. Man, I can't tell you how good it is to actually see your face across the desk, to be in studio with you again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it has, man.
You've been so busy that the only time I can get you is when I call you on your commute home.
Well, you know what? I'm just going to say whatever has to work, we will make it work.
Yes. No, it's been good. And like we said in the last episode, thankful for technology that can make it happen.
Yes.
But
as I'm looking angrily at insane drivers near me, this is a definite fresh look.
Maybe a little more peaceful for you.
Totally
better
more
mindset.
Peaceful, right?
You're not so all amped up. And
I'm not shaking my fist at anyone. Instead, I'm looking at Mark's awesome face.
Oh gosh, I don't know if that's a trade up, but I won't give you the bird. I won't cut you off.
That's good. This is exciting.
Yes.
Sweet.
Well, it is good to see you back in the studio.
Thank you, sir.
But as you know, we're going to leverage that same technology that you and I have been using to bring another voice into this conversation. I'm excited. You know, we did an interview a couple of episodes now ago, more than a couple.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool experience and appreciated the insight and the wisdom that one brought to this conversation.
Sure.
And been wanting to bring another voice and another perspective. And so, you know, the guy that's waiting in the wings here, he and I met earlier this year in a leadership training program. And we just really connected around this idea of helping to raise up men. And you know, if you think of this from a war analogy, we're on different theaters, kind of fighting on different fronts, but we're fighting the same fight.
Yep.
And that is to help bring up men of character and faith. And so when Michael and I connected early on, I kind of tucked this one away. Like, it would be really cool to bring him into this conversation in this space. And so without any further ado, let's just welcome Michael Flott into this conversation. Michael, it's great to have you with us today.
Well, I appreciate it, Mark and Alen. This is a great opportunity, and anytime I get the chance to talk about fathers and children, I take it, and I'm very passionate when it comes to this subject.
Yeah. Well, that passion came through loud and clear when we first met, and it was in a completely different context, but it created space for us to share that same passion, and we're excited to just invite you into this conversation and really just lean into what does good manhood look like, and how are we trying to make that happen, to influence others that are within our sphere. So Michael, you and I know each other. You and Alen just met. Our listeners probably have no idea really who you are. So can you just take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about your story and who you are?
Well, sure, absolutely. I always like to say that I'm the 8th out of 13 children.
Oh, wow.
Big family.
And I was the 8th one born and the 8th one married. I always kept my place. But if you talk to my brothers and sisters, they would disagree. But I grew up in Washington, D.C., to my parents, Alen and Evelyn. And my father was a lobbyist on Capitol Hill.
Okay.
He worked for the American Trucking Association. And he was, the director of their research and economics division.
Okay.
And so he spoke all over the country. But he always made it a point to be home with his families on the weekends.
Okay.
So part of his agreement was he wouldn't travel. So I grew up, went to parochial school, private school.
Okay.
All 13 of us went to the same school. All 13 of us graduated from the same school.
Wow.
The boys, most of my brothers, 4 of us, all graduated from the same private parochial boys' school. And 3 of my sisters graduated from the same parochial all-girls school. So grew up in a, all I knew was a normal environment where we had a lot of kids in our neighborhood, and every day we were outside involved in doing things.
Yeah.
And so everything centered around family and friends. So that's pretty much, and grew up, I always tell people when you're from a large family, you're involved in sports, just getting to the dinner table. So,
I've heard some of those stories, both yours and others. I know what you mean.
Yeah. And so, but everything we did a lot of things. It was constantly, play, grew up in sports. So every sport that we imaginable, we played. And we had our own track meets right out in the street. We had competition climbing trees, football, baseball, basketball, volleyball.
Yeah.
You name it. It was, so that's just basically the environment that I grew up in. And pretty much that gives you a little bit of the background. All of us, my father, which is interesting, because this plays into my story.
Yeah.
When he retired from his job, the minimum requirement to replace him at his work was a PhD in economics.
Wow.
And he had a GED after 2 years of high school.
Wow.
So to him, education was fundamental. So out of my 12 brothers and sisters, all but 3 have college degrees.
Okay. Wow.
And so one got killed in Vietnam, so he didn't have the opportunity to complete college. One spent his career in the Air Force, became a master sergeant. So really his college education was military.
Right, exactly.
And then one of them just went into, I would say, a master of many things, but mostly was into the hospitality industry, so never really got his degree. But other than that, all 10 of us, 10 out of 13, all had college degrees or advanced.
So clearly education was a priority in your family is what you're
Absolutely.
saying. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very big.
Okay.
So you graduated from college and then what? Take us from there.
Well, I graduated from college in 1974. Moved back home. Prior to really getting my first real job out of college, I had a degree in accounting. I actually went around the country with one of my dear friends from college. And that was very fulfilling. It was something I always wanted to do. And so he and I put on 10,000 miles on my purple and white van, driving around the country, visiting family, friends, and seeing the sights. Okay. And then coming back and then getting settled into my first job. I was known as a little bit of a wild man when I was young. I remember about 2 years out of college, I met my wife, and one of the things that almost every one of my older brothers and sisters said to my wife is, "What did you do to tame him?" But I always wanted to have a thing. I was working in private industry when I first met my wife, and then because of my father's connections, ended up moving into the government. And I spent 6 years in the government prior. And so during that time, I also got married and became a father for the first time in 77 and again in 1980. But in 1981, as a result of a crisis in my life, I ended up quitting my government job. I was a federal auditor of campaign funds.
Oh, wow.
And I left that job and moved to Pennsylvania because I was I was in a crisis mode. I was very, my life was falling apart, and I was just introduced into how to research and study the Bible. And I said, if this stuff is real, I'm going to quit my job and go prove that God is real to me. So that was a whole nother journey in 1981.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I moved from D.C., where I had grown up. I moved up to Pennsylvania, where I live right now, with 2 houses, 3 mortgages, 2 children, and no job.
Wow. So a lot, a lot happening at that point in your life.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, as a result of that, one of the things that, we talked about but was very big for me is I wanted to be just like my father. And yet my father and I were in conflict during this period of time as well, because he did not understand, nor did he agree with my move, because he felt that I was not taking care of my family.
Yeah. Yeah. Why would you throw away everything that you had and had worked for and even built off of some of his connections and move to another state to start over? Yeah.
With no family, the only people that I knew in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, where I ended up moving, was my wife's family. And one of my fraternity brothers had actually lived there in college, but now he was living down in D.C. So other than that, I knew no one up here. But I can tell you this, most people now, which is funny, most people now think that I'm from Phoenixville, and they don't recognize that my wife was actually born and raised there.
Yeah.
But,
You've been ingrained.
Some people have called me the mayor of Phoenixville, but I don't know why.
That's awesome.
It's your charming personality, Michael. That's it. Your effervescence. Yes.
Well, there is some truth to that, but here's one thing that I would also tell people about me that most people today can't comprehend. I grew up very shy. When you're from a large family, and one of the things that I never considered myself is to be an intellectual person or a person who was very good at speaking. But when you grow up in a large family, you are constantly being challenged, especially when your father is a genius by the world standard.
Yeah.
In our dining room, I tell people, in our dining room, we had a pedestal, and on that pedestal was a Funkorama dictionary. And if you brought up a word and nobody knew it, you went to the Funkorama to read the definition.
Wow. Wow.
So,
wow. Okay.
I told you how important education was, but also knowing how to communicate and use words properly.
Yeah.
It was very big in a large family.
Huh. Wow.
Wow.
And that plays a big part in my journey because, as I look back, and I was thinking about this, how do you share with people, I'm in a place in my life now where I can look back and I have seen many of the valleys that I had gone through. And the beauty of going up a mountain is when you look back, you're shocked at what you see. The beauty, and you don't really you can appreciate it, but other people can't always appreciate the trials and tribulations, the desert and the barrenness and the cold and all the other things that you had to go through in order to get to a height where you can appreciate the view. And so that's, I'm very fortunate today because, and I've talked to you about this, Mark, really the first crisis happened when I was almost 30 years old, probably in my late 20s. And then the second crisis came in my life right when I was turning 50 years old.
Yeah, yeah. So talk. Go ahead. Talk about that one some more, Michael.
Well, that's when, the realization of where I was in life was not where I had wanted to be in life, especially in comparison to being a husband and a father.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, set the stage for us. You're 50 years old. You've got how many kids at that point? What's going on?
Okay. Well, I'm by the world standard. I'm a successful sales representative. I'm involved in the YMCA, and I'm on the board of directors of the YMCA in my community. I'm involved in the youth baseball league. I'm on that board. I've coached, youth sports, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, in the community for years. I have 5 children, 1 daughter and 4 sons. And all of a sudden, my life feels like it is falling apart all around me. And, I had an incident with my oldest son where I put him through a wall in our living room. And what I didn't expect to, but it's something that happened. And when my wife saw the hole in the wall, her first comment to me was, "You are just like your father."
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And so that was like, putting a dagger in me. And now I'm like, okay. And the realization was, amongst my family, my brothers and sisters, they gave me the nickname of my father. So in reality, I became my father. And then all of a sudden the emotion of my relationship with my father just overwhelmed me, because one of the things that my father was that he grew up in the Depression, out in the Midwest, and he, as a young man, probably as a teenager, he actually was part of the Civil Conservation Corps, otherwise known as the CCCs, and he went up and worked in Minnesota.
Okay.
And part of the things that he did in Minnesota is they had a lot of activities. They lived similar to a military lifestyle, lived in barracks, got paid very little, but they went out and they did conservation projects, forestry, planting trees, cleaning up pathways. And one of the activities, because they had all these men living together, was boxing. And through that activity, my father actually became, for a short period of time, a professional boxer.
Wow.
So, needless to say, when you grew up in my household, and if you were male, the last thing you wanted to do was challenge my father.
Intellectually and physically, right?
Well, exactly, because if he could not beat you with his words, he could beat you with his fist.
Wow.
But either way, he was going to beat you.
Wow.
And so, but I idolized my father. And this is the thing that I really see a lot that impacts all of us as children, male or female, is understanding that our parents are not perfect.
Yeah.
But sometimes we idolize them, we put them up on a pedestal, and we do not see their faults, and we will not acknowledge them or even look at them. Or that we will think that they can't do anything right, and they're not even worthy of it. And so when you idolize a parent, you don't look at the fault.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a result of this incident in 2001, I was being confronted of not only did I become my father, but I had taken on many of his faults as well.
So in addition to the education, the intellect, the ability and the desire to compete and strive, all of a sudden you're faced with this reality that you've inherited more from him than you realized.
Oh, absolutely. And I had become the spitting image of him.
Yeah.
So much so that my brothers and sisters, called me by his nickname. And I initially was very proud of that.
What was his nickname?
What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael. I'm sorry. What was the nickname?
It was Big Al.
Big Al. Okay.
Big Al.
Yeah.
Big Al. And when my father, and I tell people this, when my father walked into a room, he commanded attention.
Okay.
And there wasn't any doubt in people's mind that something walked into the room that had to be reckoned with. On some level.
Yeah.
Either intellectually or physically. And like I said, I've had people tell me the same thing. Man, you walked into the room and everything changed. I was like, all I did was walk into the room. But when you emulate, and reflect something, which today to me is something totally different, because I want to reflect my Lord and Savior today, versus at one point I wanted to reflect my father.
Yeah.
And so, I basically was confronted with what I like to tell people, fatherhood wounds that I had ignored, but yet had put my own children through many of these same wounds. And so it was a beginning of a different journey for me that took me, it's taken me still to this day, but it was about a solid 4 years of just addressing what the pain in my life had done, not only to my children, but to my wife as well.
Okay.
So
People didn't even recognize it.
Yeah, what did that look like, Michael, as you began to turn the corner and go a different direction and re-look at how you show up in your relationships at home and at work and in the community? Like what did that look like for you as you worked through that?
Well, it was very scary, very humbling. But the most important thing out of all of it, it was very freeing. So the first thing I had to deal with and address was, how do I get out of this mess? And where do you start?
Yeah.
And the first place that the Lord led me to was understanding and comprehending what real forgiveness is. Because without that, I could never have been successful in changing. And forgiveness, I just shared this morning with one of my friends who's been through the Father's program with me, and helping him once again understand what is real forgiveness. Because most people think that forgiveness is reconciliation, and that's not forgiveness. Something totally different is reconciliation. But forgiveness is being able to release your anger or your hurt or your guilt or your shame about something that you have either done or has been done to you, and trust God, your Heavenly Father, to lead you in the right way.
Yeah.
That you no longer try to control and dictate revenge on somebody else.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I can imagine that there was a lot of struggle reconciling this idea of forgiveness with both father, what your father did to you, but also even forgiving yourself for becoming that and the things that you had done to those people around you that you cared about.
Absolutely. And the thing that I still deal with this, and I tell people I'm very honest with it, is the only way and the only reason why I can handle it today is because of forgiveness and knowing that Jesus Christ paid a price that I could never pay.
Yeah.
And opened up my eyes to, and not just the eyes, the physical eyes, but the spiritual eyes into my heart to help me understand that my Heavenly Father loves me even as much as he loved Jesus himself.
Yeah, wow.
And that was something I could not comprehend until I was almost 58 years old. Although I knew it on an intellectual level, I did not know it on a heart level.
There may only be about a foot between the head and the heart, but it's miles and miles and miles of distance.
Yeah.
It's the hardest step that every person has to take.
Yeah.
We've talked
Some
about...
might get there quicker.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
Some people might get there quicker.
Yeah.
But it is still, it was the biggest step that I had to take in my life. And today, the benefits and the blessings from doing it are now becoming exponential. Doesn't mean that life is easy, doesn't mean that there's no trials and tribulations, but it does mean that I now have a position on the mountain where I can look back over the valley and see how I have been led and why I have been led and how I now can lead others.
Wow.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Well, listeners, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with Michael Flott. I know I've benefited from knowing him, and I know you will benefit from hearing the rest of his story. We continued on after this, but decided to make the episode break here. So let me invite you to join us again next time, and we'll continue his story then. Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.